Let's have a frank conversation about investment properties, income properties in Roatan, Honduras that I'm sure no one else is going to tell you or going to be so pinpoint honest and not just skirt around some things. And the reason why I'm going to do this is I've gotten 3 emails this morning asking about properties at certain price points, 10% plus returns. And I do thank you so much for the emails. I get 10 to 20 emails from YouTube and TikTok every week. So thank you. And you do provide me with a lot of content. However, this is a common thing and I work real estate in Colorado as well, but that's more of a part-time. I have a partner that does most of the work. I just kind of do the back end, run the numbers. And let me tell you, neither place am I getting a 10% ROI on many things. And the reason is, in my opinion, as a longtime real estate investor, accredited investor, all the things, I've got 3 properties up in the US and 2, working on, finished one, about to start a second one in Roatan, Honduras currently. So I've done it well. I've also royally screwed it up. The worst property I ever bought was in the United States, and it cost me about $250,000 at the get-go. But if we talk about the appreciation and all the other things that I screwed up on it, if I had invested in really anything else, I probably would have had about $500,000 more 5 years later. But then I've also had properties that have created $500,000 within around a 3-year period. So there's a lot there, and I only tell you that because I've done it well, and I've also done it pretty poorly. Roatan's the same. I've done it well, and I've done it poorly. One of the investment properties or investment development that I worked on lost $100,000 from it. But then I used that money to then create the next deal, which also made me the $500,000 over about a 3-year period. So now I'm working on finishing project 2, about to head on number 3. I tell you this, and I'm telling you numbers because we're just going to have an honest conversation because I just get so many messages about it. And we're just going to be a straight shooter today. And I'm sorry if you do not like what I say, or if you are offended, well, it's going to save you a lot of money if you actually listen to all the way to the end. So return on investments right now. So Roatan is a fairly expensive island. We've talked about we do not have economies of scale. Does not mean things cannot be successful here, but it takes more work here. If you want instant gratification on this beautiful island, real estate can be great, but you're also going to get that instant gratification. That might or might not be a good idea if you go over to the bars, especially later in West End. That's where you're gonna get that. Sorry if that's crass, that's just, We're just gonna go for it today, and we're gonna be completely honest. So the return on your investment with real estate, can it happen? Absolutely. But you have to do it right. And most people on this island do not do it right. I've done it wrong. The last few projects, I've done it right, but that's because I've learned a lot of hard lessons. I didn't listen to the people that I should have listened to, but you get a lot of clutter, you get a lot of noise. Not saying that you need to listen to me, and not saying I'm perfect and always make the right decisions. I just have lots of contingencies when I buy and when I work on properties now. So back to numbers. Roatan is an expensive island. Materials are expensive. Wood is expensive here, just like it is in North America. Everything in this world, to my knowledge, has been getting more expensive in regards to physical items and, well, real estate. So can you buy right in Roatan? Can you build right? Absolutely. It's going to be few and far between. Your first project goes really, really well unless you are able to work with a great realtor that does know investments, that has their own investments and has their own investments on this island, because Roatan it's Roatan. It is much, much different than anywhere else in the world. And I say that as owning multiple properties in Roatan and the United States, and they are completely different. And that was one of my biggest mistakes, was taking all the knowledge that I had from the US, trying to rinse and repeat here, and it didn't work out. So going back to the numbers and to some common mistakes or common things that I just want to address, and you're gonna see a lot of sales pitches, you're gonna see a lot of marketing, just like we see anywhere. They're going to say, hey, you can have a 10% return on this, or this return, this is what we're making. Well, we do have a great rental market. It is We have a high demand for short-term rentals. Long-term rentals are few and far between. You can actually find them. So you're looking at darn near 100% occupancy, sorry, almost 0% vacancies. Short-term rentals, we used to rent a lot of the rentals, about a third of the year was a good rental. Now, if you are in West End, West Bay, you're looking at easily 75%, especially if you transfer from a short term to a mid-term in lower seasons and do price your property appropriately. Most people, well, you guys can do whatever you do. We do optimize, and you are able to make a decent amount of money. Now, if you're looking at a property day one, I have never seen anything that is going to create a 10% ROI at the very first day you get that property. And that's a lot of the questions I want, because that's kind of the ideal. It's kind of like the 10% rule, or sorry, the 1% rule in the US. You want that, but those tend to be gross numbers, not net. And if you want an ROI, your return on your investment, it's going to take a little bit of time. And so it's few and far between you're going to have that day one ready to go without having to do any renovations, without all those startup costs that you are going to have. So we do have some properties, the best that I've seen on the market to date, or that are currently on the market. There are a few that are claiming 7% ROI in some of the hot tourist areas. In my opinion, that 7% is not 7% if you look at that. That's a gross number. Gross numbers are great, and we get a lot of money coming into the island, and so your top number can look really, really good. And those are the numbers, I would say, the numbers that are created on the internet in Roatan, Honduras. Those are random number. It might as well be a random number generator. And I'm not saying anyone's doing it on purpose, but there's very little statisticians. There's very little people that do this on a professional basis. There are that they do it, but marketing numbers and reality they're not the same. So it's all those little things where it's a little bit different. And so when you do see, it will be very difficult to find a 10% return on anything that you are doing day one. Now, if you do want those high return on investments, what I'm seeing is you are going to need a decent bit of money, because you are going to be buying acres, probably several acres. You're going to be subdividing it. You're going to be building a road, which also means you need to know all of the rules, all the building rules in Roatan, Honduras. And that's probably going to be that's not a starter project. That's a maybe second, third, fourth. And then so you can learn the island. I would say first project, make it small, because you're gonna learn a lot of lessons. There's probably gonna be some expensive lessons there. And when I say these things, I by no means mean don't do it. I've done it. I'm still here. I'm still doing it. I'm still, planning ahead. It just takes a lot of work, and things are different, and every single project's going to be a little bit different. So I'd say start off small, make sure you have double the cash at least that you think you're going to need, because you're gonna need it. And I'd say it's gonna take 3 to 5 years to really get that investment out of the property if it is a sole investment property. Now, other people do quite well. They buy a house, 2-bedroom or whatnot on stilts, and then they put an apartment below it or have multiple apartments below it. And so you have a nice income that offsets some things, like the 1-bedrooms, 2-bedrooms apartments, depends on where you are, but you're probably looking at $1,000, give or take, just depending where you are if you do build that. And from a cost standpoint, you're probably looking at less than $100 a square foot to finish whatever you are doing. So you can do it. But back to the best, if you are looking for that 10% return, you're gonna have to be a developer. You're gonna have to buy a larger plot of land for a great price, which is few and far between. You're gonna have to start a company. You're gonna have to build a road. You're gonna have to create a small development. It doesn't mean you have to do a big one with an HOA and all of those things, but and then you're also gonna have to probably, you could subdivide it, subdivide it, sell it, sell the lots for about 3 times what you actually paid for that lot, maybe 4 times depending on actually where your lot is, how long you keep it. But with those lots, I would say that's also a 3 to 5 year time period for you to get that return. Now, if you start to build, if you want to build, there's a big learning curve there, but you can do very, very well if you know what you're doing. And so anyway, I digress. I'm trying to be quick with this. I just get a lot of emails on people saying, I want to spend X amount of dollars and I expect this rate of return. That is very, very difficult to achieve day one in Roatan. You're looking at, especially if you want like a 10% return, building costs are very expensive. They are elevated, and your rents, even though rents are high, they're still lower than what that cost to build is. And so there is that time period where you do need to recoup your costs. And if you're looking exclusively for an investment property, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to always be a challenge. There's a property right now in West End for $750,000. It's got 8 units in it. And I would say each unit is renting for between $1,000 and $1,500. I don't know those numbers for a fact, but if I was listing it, or if it was my house, my place, that's what I would be listing or putting into it. And so you're getting, let's just say for the sake of argument, $10,000 a month for that. You paid $750,000. That's pretty darn good. And $7,500 would be that 10% return. But we have elevated maintenance fees right now. And that example, that is the best example I see on the market right now. So we're looking at the maximum, not the average, the best. The best does happen. It just will take a little bit more patience and you working with someone that does actually know how to read numbers and also read through the BS numbers, because that's what you're going to be given, and you're going to need to work with someone that actually knows what the rents are, not just what they're saying they are or the books say they are, you know, all those pirate law type situations. So maintenance costs are also high. And so I would expect 30% to come off of that. So now you're at $7,000. So you're just shy of the 10%, which is still pretty darn good, but then you're gonna have maintenance, wear and tear. And so I would take whatever gross number you have, I'd split it in half, and that's probably what you're gonna make. So that is closer to maybe a 6% return, and I think that is the very best available on the market right now. There are others that are claiming 7% or so, but that 7% is gross. Knock that in half, you're at 3.5, you're at 3.5% ROI. So there's a lot of these different things. Can they happen? Absolutely. It's just gonna take a little bit more time, patience on your behalf, a lot of learning, working with the right people, especially a patient realtor. Hello, that's just selfless plug right there. And I tell that to my clients, if you want something that's gonna cash flow positive from day one, that's gonna be very difficult. 2, if you plan to live there at least a part of the year or at the beginning, that's going to help a lot, just because you're paying for your own home. And so that it's not just an investment, it's also your home. So you do have a little bit different opinion. Well, I'm standing in a rental unit of mine. I can throw you out the numbers for this one. It did go over budget by about 25%, some of which was me, some of which was wood costs. I did do some upgrades. So it's more of a luxury rental. It ended up costing around, not including the land, about $250,000 to build. The weekly and monthly tend to be very similar rates. In this area where I'm at, it's not gonna be big on short-term rentals other than maybe, you know, the holiday weeks, the big high weeks, where it would go for around $2,500 a week. But I would probably have this more on midterm, which I would list it on the market at $2,500, which is that, you know, that golden 1% rule, where you also turns into that 10% ROI, but that's a gross number and does not include all the maintenance and everything that I do have to do with this house, the HOA fees, etc. So any numbers that you see on the internet, I would split those in half and just say that's probably more realistic. And also, let's say price of entry. It really depends what you want, but the example I used was $750,000. That is the best I have seen on this island for a long time. If you want a showing, let me know. I'm a super fan of it. If I had that money just sitting around and I wasn't already working on a project that is about the same price, I would be seriously looking into it. This project, or this, well, what I'm doing right now is building several of these, which I do get approximately 1% for, or that 10% return, but that does not include all of my expenses. So I've talked a lot about it. You can get a return on an investment, but it is probably going to take 3 to 5 years to see just that return, because you do have a lot of startup costs that it's just expensive to start here. And so I always say Roatan is great for an investment if you genuinely love Roatan and want to spend time here. So like this project, this is on the lot that my family also lives on, which is why I'm not counting the lot price, because I already bought the land for my family to, you know, raise my family in. And so that is the primary goal with this. But however, these rental units are being built to offset that, and hopefully one day maybe help pay for my children's school and all of those things. So it's not just a financial decision. I think to have success, you also have to have love for Roatan or plan to be here for more than 3 years. We have a big churn at 3 years, but that's a whole nother thing. And I know that I've talked for over 16 minutes about it, and it's just, I get a lot of emails for it, and I want to make everybody happy. I'm also going to tell you the truth. I could probably have a little bit more tact sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's not my intent to mislead, to tell you, oh, look, they're advertising 7%. That's absolutely correct. The last client I had, we looked at it, we went through all of the numbers, and we actually went through it together. This is what I do for a living. I'm a realtor, but first and foremost, I'm a real estate investor. And so we looked at those numbers and decided that, hey, they're advertising this as a 7% ROI, but it's actually closer to 3.5%. And it's gonna be a lot lower if you actually live in one of the units, which was the goal for that one. So anyway, I digress. ROIs can happen, but we also have a golden rule in Roatan, and that is if you want to leave a millionaire, come with 2. Does not mean that good deals don't exist. Doesn't mean many people make wonderful lives for themselves and have great little nest eggs, especially if you're retired, wanting to offset things like your RICO bill, just your cost of living, just offset, and you know, having a unit under your unit and things of that nature tend to be the best. They're also the easiest to just start off as, because your risks are very, very minimal. But once you get your feet wet, then you have those larger projects that do have those really, really great returns, but that's more on the development side. You're probably looking at over $1 million. So if you are in the, $500,000 less and you want a primary home, units below or units above are a wonderful way to do it, because building up high is a lot less than building out. So you can get, you just have opportunities here. A lot of people do have at least one rental, and that just helps offset your cost of living. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a 10% return or your ROI. It's more of just, it facilitates you living on this island and reduces your expenses, is where I see the most people find success. Now, another video, we can talk a little bit more after your first few projects, but this is just kind of what we're looking at in Roatan. And thank you so much for listening. If you made it to the end, you're absolutely amazing, because I talked for about 18 minutes. And if you ever have any questions, my door is always open and you will get an honest answer from me. I'm not always correct. I'm human. I do make mistakes. There we go. But I do have an opinion, and I usually talk from a place of being at least somewhat educated, or if I am not, I know someone to call, and I can usually find somewhat of an educated answer. Doesn't mean it's the right answer or the answer that you want to hear, which that's another thing. Anyway, but we can talk about cultural differences in a later time. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a wonderful day.